I was originally going to wait to do this one, but it has to be said. This legitimately made me want to crash out so bad, so bad.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about Luke 14 next. Again, just one of my favorite parts of the book, this one towards the very end. Can you just describe that passage for us? I love the way that you talk about it in the book and kind of why that, again, it's another one of those passages that I've heard preached, I'm sure, many times. I've read plenty of times. It never would have showed up on a list for me of passages to think about disability. So can you kind of just describe for us what that passage talks about and what it means in the context of the book?
This is the part of Luke 14 that she's talking about, the parable of the great banquet. Now, there's so much in this that honestly, I can't even put it all into one screenshot. I would highly recommend go read Luke 14 in full. I keep saying that with this response, but really and truly, you've got to read these chapters in full. Luke 14, before it even gets to this parable, Jesus gives teachings on humility. He has a controversy about the Sabbath. Like, there's a lot that happens. And then remember, this specific part is a parable, not a literal directive. This is not a historical event. That's important. That is important to remember.
This is one of my favorite passages in scripture because it's so rich with meaning for me. Jesus is describing a banquet, and we call it the Great Banquet. And usually, when it's talked about, it's taken to be eschatology. And so we're using this as a way of thinking about what new creation or what heaven is going to be like.
Actually, actually, now the parable of the great banquet is less about eschatology and more so about who would accept Jesus as the Messiah. The whole point is that those originally in the covenant of God are rejecting Jesus as the Messiah. And then his invitation of salvation gets extended to everybody else. So, not really.
And in the description, Jesus says that people are to go out and invite poor and disabled people first.
This is what made me legitimately want to crash out because that statement is at best a gross misreading of the text, just a terrible misreading of this scripture. And at worst, it is a blatant, deceptive lie. Jesus does not say to go and invite the poor and disabled people first. In fact, I'll prove it to you. In the original parable, a man is giving a banquet. And it's Jesus is explaining this. He says a man was giving a large banquet and invited many. Now, we're not really told who those many are, but it's certainly not specifically the poor and disabled. So at the time of the banquet, this man sends his servant to tell those who are invited to come because everything is ready. And if you keep reading, every single person invited has some ridiculous excuse as to why they cannot attend or accept the invitation. This is why, as a parable, it's showing that those who were originally in that covenant with God, who were invited to the banquet, would reject the invitation. Jesus is the one inviting them, and they are going to reject him, which they do. And then salvation is extended to the Gentiles. But wait, there's more. It's actually not until we get to verse 21. The servant comes back, reports this to his master that everyone who was invited said no. And then the master says, go to the streets, the alleys of the city, and bring in the poor, the maimed, the blind, and the lame. So, no, disabled people were not invited first. And again, this is a parable. This is describing the spiritually poor, maimed, blind, lame, not the physically poor, maimed, blind, and lame. Again, this is about people in desperate need of Jesus. It's not a physical descriptor.
And that then there will be enough for everyone else to eat as well. And what a beautiful message of what new creation looks like and tastes like, that it's a delicious banquet where poor and disabled people are centered.
Nope, 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 and no. Disabled people are not centered. So if you saw my video from yesterday and were wondering who on earth would say that Jesus centered disabled people, this is where I got that from. And like I said, this made me want to crash out. I've listened to this video multiple times in preparation for a response, and I get viscerally angered every single time. Because again, I, in good faith, at best, this is a gross misreading of the scripture. And at worst, it's a lie. It is blatantly deceptive because that is not remotely what this text says. It does not even infer this. Why would Jesus center anybody? Why would God center a human being of any demographic? We are the ones that center God. He does not center us in any capacity. No.
And that is enough for us all. There's no talk of cure. There's no talk of condemnation. There's no one critiquing the idea of, are those really your access needs? Which is something that I receive a lot in churches. But rather, there's community and everyone is the richer for it. And Jesus talks about non disabled people and people with means being blessed as partaking in this because poor and disabled people won't be able to return the favor.
Now, hang on. That is referencing a completely different scripture, but it is in Luke 14. Let's go there. This is the specific part of Luke 14 that talks about inviting those who cannot repay you. This is also not about eschatology. This is part of the section in the teachings on humility. The point being to give to those who cannot repay you. Because guess what Jesus is going to do? Give of himself for us, and none of us can repay him. Not, this is what Jesus is doing. She is extrapolating specifically verse 13. On the contrary, when you host a banquet, invite those who are poor, maimed, lame, or blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you. You'll be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Again, this is about humility. It's not centering disabled people. It is not saying to invite the disabled first. No, it's Jesus teaching us how to treat others because this is what he's doing for us. And then we are to go and do likewise. It's not about any specific demographic.
And I really love that image of new creation and of what church community can be for one another. Because to your point, there's no spiritual bypassing of saying, let's just pray this person away or let's make this person God's problem, right? Instead, it's saying, I am going to create an accessible banquet that you can participate in. Because in order for there to be poor and disabled people at the banquet, you have to know them, you have to make accommodations, you have to meet their access needs. So the great banquet is an accessible feast for us all.
Hmm.
The great banquet is actually about God, not us. It's a parable of who ultimately will reject Jesus and then those that will be invited and will accept Jesus. Is there some eschatology in there? Maybe, sure. But is this necessarily about disabled people? No, not at all. Not even a little bit. This is not our big accessible banquet. This is what God is doing. We are not in a position, we don't get the authority to make it about us. Jesus is the main character, not any demographic of human beings.